Hi, this is Maurice Hyman, self-empowerment coach, healer, and preconception, prenatal, and parenthood doula. In this video, I'm going to explain the concept of limbic imprinting. So what is the limbic brain or the limbic system? So the limbic system is the part of the brain and nervous system that governs our emotional body. It's more to the center of the brain, and from the very, very beginning, from conception, it records feelings and sensations. Now, Leonard Nielsen, an amazingly skillful photographer, published an amazing book, A Child is Born, with scientific photos of early life where we see in the very, very early weeks after conception that the baby looks like a little fish, and the primary part that we see already formed is the spinal cord. We are now finding out that the polyvagal nerve is really closely linked with all of our nervous system, and it's also one of the first things created in a baby's life, and it's at the top of the limbic system. So right from the get-go, a baby is feeling and developing neural pathways or highways. The nervous system is soaking up the environment from the information from the environment. So from that we know that what we experience in utero is just as important as what we experience in birth and the early years. And this info is not for us to judge or blame ourselves and others about what exactly happened, but rather to use that information as empowerment with the understanding that it had great impact on us, to understand ourselves better and to seek healing where needed, either for ourselves or for our children. So now you know that our conception and in utero experiences deeply impact us long term, and as a result, our whole society. But also, very importantly, birth practices affect us as individuals and our culture and the whole civilization in general. So, bright lights, strangers' voices, stress, fear, any touch that's not gentle, harsh medical interventions in the birth process, separation of the baby from the parents, a stranger's cold hand as the first touch, all examples that deeply impact the limbic system and its imprinting. Now, according to 10-year studies in the 80s done by Emerson, Sills, and Castellino, 85 to 95% of us experienced some degree of prenatal and birth trauma from our own birth experience, impacting our self-identity, self-esteem, personality, behavior into adulthood, until, of course, it's integrated and healed, and it's never, never too late. Now, unfortunately, since the 80s, in the world of birth, medical intervention have only increased, as well as the disrespect for the birthing family's choices and non-medical compassionate support that makes everything easier. Now, the field of pre and perinatal psychology, which sadly is not yet mainstream, tells us that what happens in the foundational period can shift a person's capacity for loving themselves and others. So we can clearly see that we have some work to do as a society, as a species, if we look at the state of the world in terms of peacefulness. But the great news is you can at any age shift those imprints for yourself, and you will benefit everybody around you. And that is what the Birth into Being method does, a method that I am trained in. So rather than blaming ourselves about what happened in the past from our own birth, childhood, or our own children, as that tendency can be very strong for us to blame ourselves, I invite you to not do that at all, but instead to use the information that we see from the foundational period to empower ourselves and our children, and without beating ourselves up, to realize there might be a tendency to stress in the nervous system, and then to do what we can now, because it's never too late, to ease that path, knowing that Healing at any age happens with compassion, care, and love. So I love the quote from Maya Angelou saying, "Do the best you can until you know better. And when you know better, you do better." So healing the limbic imprint for adults is possible with the birth into being method that I'll tell you more about soon, or other modalities. And healing for our own children, I can quickly name 5 things you can do. Lots of skin to skin and touch, baby massage, responsive, connected, compassionate and peaceful, respectful, conscious parenting, which doesn't mean there's no loving boundaries. So also sleep talking, letting them know in their non-cognitive brain while they're sleeping, yes, it wasn't great, Mama and Daddy is here, but Mama and Daddy is here now, and we're doing our best. You are safe, you are welcome, and you are loved, and we are here to help you move through this, and we're helping ourselves too in the process. So, the next thing you can do to heal your children is lots of time in close contact with nature. And lastly, healing yourself as the parent. Any healing a parent does for themselves on their own imprints will bring healing to their children and everybody around them automatically as well. So the fact that you are here watching this video is marvelous. So during gestation, birth and early childhood, the limbic system in the brain then registers the information from all of our sensations and feelings and creates neural pathways and ways of being that are habitual. For instance, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to others, the world, and we really see it impacting things like safety, trust, that dance between protection or connection, which impacts not only our intimate relationships, but also our relationships with friends, even our ability to give love to our own children. So the way we experience life as adults is greatly determined by this original imprint. When the limbic brain is not activated as the wise one or the elder, by using your free will and consciousness like we do in the birth into being method, the limbic brain, with its original imprint, is just left to act out the imprint from the formative period, showing up as patterns in our life, like how we react under stress, in relationships, our capacity to love ourselves and others, and our level of intimacy. So it's also important to know that our formative imprints are awakened whenever we enter a conception journey for ourselves. And eventually when we give birth, this can affect the birth field, just like the imprints from everybody else at the birth. Now, when we become parents ourselves, there is nothing like our limbic imprint being such a wonderful mechanism that allows us to see those gaps inside us that need our loving attention so we can fill the gaps and be our best selves for our children. It's logic that if our common state of being is still contraction and protection, then giving love to our children can also be a great challenge. So we cannot do anything about our limbic imprint. It's like fingerprints. We can only train our nervous system to recognize something else as love, safety, and connection. And that's exactly what we're doing with the various processes in the birth into being method that I work with. The beauty is you do not have to know the exact details of the actual imprints to shift it. You only need to know where you want to be going. So the birth into being method I am trained in and have used as part of my own healing is designed to address our early limbic imprinting that may be holding us back in life or in birth by peeling away the layers and revealing your true self. It consists of a whole body of processes and exercises working with our free will and conscious and full consciousness, intentional movement to music, breath work, tri-brain processes, guided visualizations, somatic touch, and embodiment practices all designed to maximize our inherent production of oxytocin, to rewire our neuronal pathways and create new empowering reference points in the body and nervous system so that we can have a deep sense of safety, belonging, vitality, intimacy, so that we can be our true selves in living a joyful and connected life, as well as birthing whenever we are birthing new projects, new creative works, or new babies. So, as I mentioned earlier, birth practices and early experiences deeply affect us as individuals, our culture, and the whole civilization in general. So things like conscious conception and a pleasurable birth, which is the body's intent, are wonderful options to go for to set the stage consciously and with love. And in fact, free will is our birthright, but it's our limitation conditioning from our birth and early imprints making us not to own it. Some might say it is deliberate crowd control by those in power, as they prefer a submissive crowd that doesn't own their power. But the concept of limbic imprinting is being used already for a long time by humans to control animals. So the same thing that works with elephants works with people as well. It's very sad that a baby circus elephant is trained to obey by being tied to a pole. And when he grows up all big and mighty, he doesn't think to break free because he believes he cannot do it. So imagine what will happen if you break free from your limbic imprint. So if this sounds intriguing to you, as Birth into Being facilitator, I'd be happy to help you recode your limbic imprint. You're welcome to check out my website, www.marisehyman.com, MARISEHYMAN, for all the juicy details. And I would highly recommend you to watch the film Birth as We Know It, telling the extraordinary story of our limbic imprint and the coming about of the Birth into Being method with the conscious birthing camps that spiritual midwife Elena Vladimirova was part of during the conscious evolution in Russia in the 1980s. So Elena learned firsthand that how we felt welcomed in our entry to life deeply impacts all of our life, all of the way we love, as well as our ability to remain connected to the source from which we come, as well as all of our new creations, including creating new babies. And that if we try to fix problems in our society and in our individual lives without going back to the root, we are just putting band-aids on. So at my website, marisehyman.com, where I talk about the Birth into Being method, you will find a link to access this extraordinary film. I leave you with only this question. Who would you be? What would you do if your limbic imprinting is not holding you back anymore?